I never expected my own mother to challenge my existence like it was a game show. But the day she leaned in, smirked, and said, "Let's see how smart you really are," something inside me broke, and I did something I can never take back. Growing up in my house never felt peaceful. Intelligence wasn't something to be proud of. It was something used against me. Whenever I tried to show what I knew or share something I learned, it turned into a competition I never asked for. My mom always had someone else to compare me to. A cousin who was naturally smarter, a neighbor's kid who was more hardworking, even random children she met at family gatherings. No matter what I did, someone out there was always better. And it didn't stop there. Whenever I achieved something, even something small, she brushed it off like it didn't matter. If I brought home good grades, she'd shrug and say, "Anyone can do that." If I solved a hard problem or learned a new skill, she'd say, "It's not a big deal." But the moment I failed, even slightly, she made sure everyone knew. It was like my mistakes were spotlights she enjoyed turning on. My dad, he never stepped in. He would sit quietly, pretending not to hear the comments, avoiding the tension like it was smoke he could just walk around. That silence left me alone with the pressure, carrying the weight of every comparison by myself. That night at dinner felt normal at first. We were all sitting together, eating quietly, and I was trying to share something hopeful. I told my parents about the career path I wanted to follow, something I had been thinking about for months. I expected at least a simple, supportive nod. Instead, my mom looked at me with that familiar smirk, the one that always came before an insult. She let out a short laugh and said, "Smart? Please, let's see how smart you really are in the real world." Her voice wasn't soft or private. She said it loudly, boldly, like she wanted it to sting. And it did. My little siblings froze. Even they knew the comment was harsh. They looked at me like I had been slapped right there at the table. I felt my face burn, not from embarrassment alone, but from the shock of hearing those words from my own mother. It wasn't just a joke. It wasn't just another sarcastic comment. It felt personal, like she wanted me to fail just so she could say, "I told you so." In that moment, something inside me twisted. It wasn't anger at first. It was resentment, deep and heavy, settling in a place I didn't know existed. After that dinner, things didn't get better. If anything, they got worse. My mom's sarcastic comments became part of my daily routine, almost like she enjoyed reminding me that I wasn't as smart as I thought. Every time I studied, she'd roll her eyes. Every time I tried something new, she'd predict I would fail before I even began. It felt like she was waiting for me to mess up, just so she'd have another reason to say, "See? I knew it." The pressure built slowly, like water filling a glass. Every little remark, every laugh, every dismissal, none of them seemed big on their own. But together they became heavy. I started avoiding conversations with her. I walked on eggshells, careful with my words, careful with my dreams. What hurt most was this feeling that she wasn't just criticizing me, she was competing with me. As if my success made her uncomfortable. As if my growth somehow threatened her. And all the while my dad stayed the same, quiet, distant, pretending not to notice the tension creeping into every corner of our home. I didn't realize it then, but resentment was growing inside me like a slow-burning fire, waiting for the moment it would finally explode. It didn't happen overnight. But after years of being talked down to, something inside me finally snapped. I remember lying awake one night, staring at the ceiling, replaying her words over and over again. "Let's see how smart you really are in the real world." At first, those words hurt. Then they made me angry. And slowly, that anger turned into a plan. It wasn't a dramatic plan. I didn't want to scream or argue or prove anything with a big speech. I was tired of shouting into a wall. So I decided to do the one thing she never expected. I decided to leave. Not forever. Just long enough to breathe without feeling judged. Long enough to prove to myself that I could survive without her dragging me down. I started saving every bit of money I could. I worked extra hours, kept quiet, and pretended everything was normal while I planned my escape. There was no note, no goodbye. One morning, I packed a small bag, grabbed my savings, and walked out. No yelling, no fighting, just silence. It was the calmest decision I ever made, and yet the boldest. For the first time, I chose myself over her expectations. The first few days on my own felt strange. There was a sudden quiet around me, a quiet I wasn't used to. No criticism, no sarcastic comments, no comparisons. Just my own breathing, my own thoughts. Part of me felt free, like I could finally exist without someone watching and judging every move I made. But that freedom came with fear I had never felt before. I quickly realized how heavy real life could be. Rent wasn't just a number, it was a weight. Groceries, bills, transportation, everything added up faster than I could keep track. I worked long hours, sometimes skipping meals just to save money. I struggled to balance work and studies, often falling asleep at my desk. But even in the hardest moments, I refused to go back. Every time the doubt crept in, I heard her voice in my head. Let's see how smart you really are. That sentence became my fuel, my push to keep going. For the first time, my life was mine. Messy, difficult, exhausting, but mine. And every small victory, even buying my own groceries or paying my own rent, felt like a quiet rebellion against everything she said I couldn't do. As weeks turned into months, my routine became tougher but somehow more meaningful. I worked early mornings and late nights, sometimes barely getting enough sleep. But every paycheck, every completed assignment, every small achievement felt like proof that I could stand on my own. Slowly things started to change. I learned how to manage my expenses. I learned how to solve problems without calling home. I learned how strong I could be when no one was watching. Eventually, after countless applications and interviews, I landed a stable job, something I had dreamed of for years. For the first time, I wasn't just surviving. I was building a life. I could afford better food, better clothes, even a tiny upgrade in the place I lived. Felt like stepping into a new version of myself. But success didn't erase the past. Each win reminded me of every insult I'd heard growing up. Every accomplishment whispered, "You did this alone." And as proud as that made me, it also hurt. Because deep down, I wished someone from home had believed in me before I had to prove myself this way. Success came, but so did the realization that I got here without the people who should have supported me most. It didn't take long for my absence to shake the house. At first, my family assumed I was staying with a friend or working late. But when I didn't return the next morning, or the next night, the panic set in. My phone lit up with missed calls, mostly from my dad. Not a single one from my mom. She was too proud to dial my number herself, but she had no problem calling relatives, neighbors, anyone who might know where I'd gone. Dad's messages were filled with worry. "Just tell us you're safe. Please come home. Your mom is losing sleep." But then relatives started reaching out with a different tone. They said my mom was saying things like, "They'll come crawling back any day now." Acting like I had run away on a whim, like it was all some childish stunt. But when days passed and I stayed silent, her attitude changed. She started calling people late at night, asking if anyone had seen me. She even checked places she knew I used to visit. The confident, mocking woman who pushed me away was suddenly scared. For the first time, she understood what it felt like to lose the person she kept pushing too far. When I finally decided to visit home, it wasn't because I missed the house. It was because I was ready to face everything I had run from. Walking up to the front door felt strange, like returning to a place I once knew but no longer belonged to. I expected anger, shouting, or another sarcastic comment waiting for me. But what I saw instead completely shocked me. My mom opened the door, and for the first time in my life, she looked unsure. Not confident. Not mocking. Unsure. Her eyes searched my face like she didn't recognize me. I had changed and she felt it. She didn't yell. She didn't question me with her usual tone. Instead, she said quietly, "Why did you leave like that?" There was no blame in her voice, only fear. Before I could answer, she added something I never expected to hear. "I didn't know you'd take it that far." Her words hung in the air, heavy and fragile. She wasn't angry that I left, she was scared of what she had pushed me to do. And in that moment, I realized I didn't come back as the same child she once controlled. I came back as someone who had learned to stand without her. For years, I had carried the weight of every harsh word, every sarcastic remark, every time my mom made me feel small. And now, standing in front of her, I realized it was time to finally speak it aloud. I started slowly, my voice shaking at first, but gaining strength with every word. "I felt like nothing I did was ever enough for you," I said. "Every time I tried to succeed, you made it seem like it didn't matter. And every time I failed, you made sure the whole world knew." I told her about the constant comparisons, the little digs disguised as jokes, the way she made intelligence feel like a curse instead of a gift. I explained how her words shaped my childhood, how they pushed me to leave, and how they haunted me long after I had gone. She didn't interrupt. She didn't defend herself. She just listened, her eyes filling with tears. And for the first time, I saw a side of her I'd never seen before. remorse. Quiet, deep remorse. In that moment, I realized something important. Speaking the truth didn't just free me, it forced her to confront the reality she had never admitted. After I finally spoke my truth, things didn't magically go back to the way they were. We didn't hug it out and pretend the past never happened. Change like that doesn't happen overnight. But slowly I started noticing differences. My mom stopped making sarcastic comments about my achievements. She stopped comparing me to others. Even the way she looked at me changed. Less judgment, more caution, like she was afraid of pushing me too far again. Our conversations became quieter but more honest. She didn't try to control me anymore, and I stopped fearing her words the way I used to. Dad, who had mostly stayed silent all these years, finally started supporting me in small ways. Asking about my life, listening without judgment. It wasn't perfect. There were still tense moments and old habits died slowly. But for the first time I felt respected in my own home. The resentment I had carried for years began to fade. I realized that sometimes, people only change when they are forced to face the consequences of their actions. And for my mom, seeing me leave and stand on my own finally made her understand that words can hurt deeper than anyone realizes. Some people would say I went too far. That leaving my home, walking away from my family, was extreme. That I should have stayed, endured, or argued more. Maybe they are right, maybe it looked like revenge from the outside. But the truth is, leaving wasn't about punishing anyone. It wasn't about proving a point or making my mom feel bad. It was about survival. I needed to breathe, to grow, to become someone independent without being held back by constant judgment. Walking away taught me lessons I couldn't have learned any other way. I discovered my own strength, my resilience, and the reality that my worth isn't determined by anyone else's opinion. So yes, I went far, but in doing so I found myself. And that, more than anything, was the smartest move I ever made. Looking back, I realize now that the hardest lessons often come from the people we love most. My mom's taunts, the comparisons, the constant pressure. They hurt deeply, but they also taught me something invaluable. I learned that our worth isn't defined by anyone else, not even family. I learned that sometimes the smartest choice isn't to argue, to prove, or to beg for recognition. It's to step away and carve your own path. Walking away doesn't mean giving up on love or family. It means giving yourself the chance to grow without being trapped by someone else's judgments. Most importantly, I learned that strength comes in many forms. It's not just about intelligence or success. It's about knowing when to protect yourself, when to stand alone, and when to value your own voice over the words of others. In the end, choosing yourself is never selfish. It's necessary.